Right, I'm just editing this video at silly o'clock in the morning. I'm looking up clips to post onto my video. I'm doing my research, I'm watching the news, etc. And it's kind of hit me. Where the hell is the same international outcry for the white South African Boer farmers who are having their lands taken away from them and who are the subject of an intended genocide by the racist natives? Why isn't there a resettlement program over here in the UK for the likes of them? Why aren't the left-wing celebrities and politicians falling over themselves to tweet support for them? Anyway, that's just a thought. On with the video. Hello again, folks. Now, this Afghanistan situation is going to be dragging on for quite a while now, folks. And I can guarantee the mainstream media are going to be milking this story to death. And as I mentioned in yesterday's video, I told you of the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation. Now, thinking of putting two and two together, I'd imagine that with the title Organisation of Islamic Cooperation, I would have hoped that Islamic countries that are members of this organisation would cooperate and help out the Afghan people. But surprise, surprise, not a peep. But I can guarantee you, folks, that the Islamic countries who are cooperating together, they're doing so in order to direct all the Afghan people fleeing the Taliban into Great Britain. And I wonder why. Anyway, because of the lily-livered liberal politicians we have in this country, they, along with Twitter, are literally falling over themselves to try and bring over as many so-called Afghan refugees here. And I say so-called because I can guarantee you, folks, that amongst the thousands of people currently trying to flee the Taliban, I'd say the majority of them would be economic migrants, and the true refugees with that refugee status would be in the minimum, because these were the people who were employed by the British and US forces to help them out while they were there. So naturally, the Taliban being the Taliban, they'll be seeking out retribution, looking for these people to kill and torture them and their families. That's how they work, folks. So I've no qualms whatsoever to bring over interpreters, etc., who helped out our forces. These people are genuine refugees. But the numbers that the hysterical Twitter mob and the lily-livered liberal politicians are talking about is just absolutely insane. Now, do you remember when Boris Johnson was running for Prime Minister? He wanted to be elected, he wanted to be the boss, and he used the immigration concerns of the British people to his advantage. That's what politicians do. Now, he promised us in his manifesto to only allow migrants in using the Australian points-based system. Well, that's gone completely out the window, because look at the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, and what she's tweeted. She tweeted, "Today we launch our new Afghan citizens resettlement scheme. It will welcome up to 20,000 people forced to flee Afghanistan, prioritise women, girls, children and others most in need, and save lives." Now, 20,000 people is a lot. We are but a small island union, and our public services, including the NHS, schools, they're all buckling already, because we already have hundreds of migrants arriving by the day on their little dinghies across the channel from France. And as for prioritising women, girls and children, look at this photo of the C-17 plane that took off from Kabul on the day the Taliban took over. I don't see many women and children in there, do you? Now, make of that photo what you will, folks. But again, considering there's a pandemic going on, British people are being restricted to where they can go, etc. And now the government are flying in 20,000 foreigners. And they won't even be checking their passports or identification. And this is a concern because ISIS have said, folks, that they would be putting members of their terrorist organisation into influx of migrants. I mean, look at the Manchester Arena bomber. And there have been plenty of atrocities committed by Islamic refugees who failed immigration status. But by accepting these huge numbers, I think Boris Johnson and the Conservatives have let down the people who voted for them. And they've put this country in a hell of a position. Now look at these tweets by Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister. And I believe these tweets are designed to appease the hysterical Twitter mob. Remember, folks, Twitter can force governments to do U-turns in their policies. It's done this before. And the government need to realise that it's the people that vote them in, not some hysterical, screeching, right-on, progressive, woke mob on Twitter. Twitter is nothing. Actually, Twitter needs to die. So here we go, Boris Johnson. We have an enduring commitment to the Afghan people, and we will honour it. A new resettlement scheme will create a safe and legal route for those in most need to come and live safely in the UK. I would argue that the Prime Minister Boris Johnson has an enduring commitment to the people who voted for him and the country as a whole. And here's another one. We must help the people of Afghanistan choose the best of all their possible futures. That is the critical task on which this government, working alongside our friends and partners around the world, is now urgently engaged. I agree, but I don't think their best possible futures are here. I think their best possible futures are in Islamic countries which share their language, religion and cultures. None of this policy, this insane idea of bringing over 20,000 Afghans, will do absolutely anything for the best possible futures of the NHS and public services. And lastly, there's this tweet. We are doing everything we can to help those in Afghanistan to whom we owe a debt of obligation. Right, I would argue that we don't owe Afghanistan jack shit. I think our debt to them was paid in full when we sent our armed forces there and they died in order to save Afghans from the brutal reign of the Taliban. Not to mention the millions of dollars and pounds worth of military equipment they just left there. So yeah, that's our obligation paid off in full, don't you think so, folks? But this tweet is the icing on the cake for me for somebody in such a position that shows they don't give a flying monkey's shit about their own people. This is Mark Drakeford. He is, of course, the floppy-faced First Minister of Wales. And, of course, being a wealthy Welshman in a position of power, he is a natural liberal. And I believe this tweet by him has put Wales in danger. Anyway, this is what he tweeted. We want Wales to be a nation of sanctuary and we'll do everything we can to support evacuations from Afghanistan. We're working with the Home Office and councils on preparations to support those who need it. Now, by tweeting this, Mark Drakeford has shown the whole of Wales he doesn't give a fig about them. And by wanting to accept this huge, enormous amount of people, then this will put enormous pressure onto the poor people of Wales. Now, this isn't all about public services in Wales. This is about the Welsh language and culture. Of course, naturally, this huge influx of migrants will put enormous pressure on the Welsh NHS and public services. And anyway, aren't the Welsh nationalists and the Welsh Assembly always moaning about the fact that they never get enough money from Westminster? And if this is the case, that they don't get enough money per head, then how on earth is Wales going to cope with the sudden influx of thousands of more people to look after? I think someone in the Welsh Assembly has been telling porcupines about their finances, don't you? Now, I can tell you from experience, because I grew up in Wales for 18 years before I saw sense, joined the army and left, that the NHS there is absolutely shocking. And unlike in England, the Welsh NHS is actually run by the Welsh Government, so the buck stops at them. The NHS in Wales really is a shoddy service. I mean, here's an example for you. My mother was diagnosed with cancer a few years ago. So as you can imagine, this kind of news worried her greatly considering her age. And of course, we, her children, were very worried. And then a few weeks later, she had a letter saying it was all a big mistake. They'd sent her the wrong letter. My mother had been cleared of cancer, but there was a poor woman in North Wales who had mistakenly received my mother's letter of the all clear and now had to prepare herself for the news that she had cancer. That's the kind of shit that goes on with the NHS in Wales, folks. And where exactly are the Welsh Assembly going to put these migrants? I'm telling you now, they won't put them anywhere near their wealthy middle-class hovels, their expensive gated communities, or their exclusive leafy middle-class suburbs. They will put these Afghan immigrants smack bang in the middle of run-down council estates, and of course now being priority for social housing and benefits. This will cause resentment from other people living in run-down council estates, and it will cause division. So you will have the natives running into the arms of the right-wing extremists, and you'll have the Afghans keeping to their own little communities, not integrating, resenting the attitude against them, and quite possibly turning to Muslim extremists in mosques. So that is why I believe bringing these people over here en masse is counterproductive and dangerous, and does nobody any favours whatsoever. And it certainly isn't racist or Islamophobic to suggest that these Afghan people, or the ones who genuinely fear for their lives at least by running away from the Taliban, are all rehoused in Islamic countries, like I said before, where they share the language, the culture and the religion. I mean, it makes sense to me, and actually thinking about it, it's amazing how many Afghans who fled to the UK a few years ago and claimed asylum now appear to be stuck in Afghanistan again after attending a wedding or visiting relatives. How odd is that, ladies and gentlemen? And there was me thinking that if you wanted asylum from your home country, then your home country was too dangerous to return to. So it's quite obvious it's a big, massive scam, isn't it? Come on, let's admit it. Anyway, I'll leave that with you. Please comment, let me know what you think of my video. And if you'd like to support my channel, then you can buy me a beer. Because by buying me a beer, we bypass YouTube and Google, and they don't see a penny of what you give me. So if you support free speech, if you like what I do, if you support what I say, then please buy me a beer. Right, that's it, folks. Until my next video, comment, share, subscribe, and until my next one, Roger Trout.